and welcome to this week's YouTube video. Today I'm going to show you how I painted this black Labrador. Before I show you the time-lapse video of the painting, I wanted to break this painting down so I show you how I tackled it. Firstly, this is a hard painting to do. It is hard because there is a very limited value range in the dark areas. If 10 is our darkest value, I would say we probably have a narrow range of 7 to 10. We do not have much of a value range in the blanket it is laying on either. I would say maybe a 3 or a 4. If I turn this painting into black and white, you'll see what I mean. Not only that, but there is a very limited colour range in this painting. I am dealing with predominantly black and white. If I were to treat this painting in these simplistic terms and only really use my black and white, I would be left with something that did not suggest form, so the solidness of my dog would not be convincing. So what can I do then to overcome this? The answer lies in my temperature shifts. So for example, here in this area, I have added more red to my black. This is then placed next to either a green that leans heavily on the blue or a yellow-grey. I am also using purples as well, where I am mixing my red and blue, as well as using greens with a stronger leaning to yellow in the light areas. For the blanket, I am using the colour opposites of purple and yellow. So yellow will neutralise purple and vice versa, giving me a neutral grey. I am also using the split complementary of orange for the really warm areas. By working with colour rather than just black and white, I am ensuring that my painting has a believability about it, as the colour shifts help create the sense of form. So for example, on the top of the dog's head area, my shifts goes as follows: warm, cool, warm, cool, warm, cool, warm. And I repeat this process throughout the painting. So you really need to look at your reference photos and see what they are telling you, because even though they cannot accurately show the detail in the dark shadows and light areas, they can tell me the sort of light that I am looking at. So remember the rule: cool light equals warm shadows and warm light equals cool shadows. So just assess your photo for the type of light, and then it will tell you whether you need to go cool, that is this side of the colour wheel, or warm, that is this side of the colour wheel. So now I will show you the time-lapse video of the painting and talk briefly about what I am doing for my process. I do have some full-length animal paintings on my channel, so check these out if you want to see my process not speeded up. So for this painting, I am doing an underpainting first. I don't always do this. It really depends on the painting itself. If it is a black animal, I am much more likely to do an underpainting, or if it is a tricky painting, I am much more likely to do an underpainting. But if it is a more colourful painting, and I want to keep these colours as fresh as possible, I probably won't do an underpainting in this way. This is because the colours that I am using here, which is raw umber and white, tends to mute the overpainting, or the colours that I lay over the top. For a black animal, this is not really an issue. Also, the benefits of an underpainting are that it splits up the colour and value process. So here I am just working out my values only. That is how light and dark it is. I can then add the colour separately, not worrying about having to work out the value at the same time. So I will test any colour I have mixed up on my painting by dabbing a small amount on the area I want to paint to see if it is the correct value. Remember, by value I mean how light or dark it is. In the UK we tend to say tone. When I talk about colour, I mean what hue is it. So for example, is it red, is it yellow, is it blue, etc. My underpainting is always pretty loose. I also use Gamsol, which is mineral spirits, to thin my paint. In the early stages, it is much better to be a bit loose with your underpainting. It is easier to start off loose and then refine than to do a really neat and comprehensive underpainting and then try to be expressive over the top of it. Because if you feel your underpainting is too good, you'll be much more precious about painting over the top of it. So keep it loose and expressive at this stage. A good way to force yourself to do this is to use a bigger brush than you feel comfortable using. This will then force you to be less tight with your underpainting. I did this painting in 4 sittings over 4 days. I find it easier to work in this way, and if I get stuck on an area, I tend to leave it and move on to another part of the painting. I will then have another go at it the next day. I find this way of working the least stressful, and I am less likely to overfiddle with an area and overwork it. When I start adding the colour, I start with a very thin layer of paint, thinned with my Gamsol, and I am applying a bit of an average colour to what I think the temperature is. So I may add red to my black to warm it up, or perhaps blue to cool it down. I'm not going straight into the detail. I am going more for an average that will act as my base and I can build upon it. I'm using mainly a flat brush to apply the paint as I find it lays really expressive strokes. I'll use a smaller round brush for the detail in the eye area. If you want to see me paint this dog's eye in detail, then please check out this video on my channel. In the early stages of adding the colour, I tend to keep the paint thinner in the lighter areas. Often, if I think I have applied too much paint, I will wipe it off. I tend to like to leave the thicker paint for these areas last, because I think you've got very little room for getting it wrong. And as the lighter areas tend to carry more white, the paint will be naturally more opaque, so I tackle them at the end. I find the underpainting helps not throw out my values until I get around to painting these lighter areas. On the next layer, I will start to lay my paint a bit thicker, and I will use a little linseed oil to make it a bit more pliable. But I don't want to add too much because super slippy paint will make it more likely that I could lose control of my painting. It's on this layer that I am starting to be much more precise with my temperature shifts. If you want to see my exact colour palette, have a look in the item description where it will tell you the colours I am using and also the brands of paint as well. I am mixing both cool and warm purples in the dog's fur. I swap my cadmium red, which produces a warm, almost brown purple, for alizarin crimson, which produces a cooler purple. My greens are mixed with yellow ochre light and ultramarine, and this green can be both warm and cool depending upon how much of each colour I add. My black reds are mixed with black, cadmium red and a trace of white. My yellow blacks are a mix of black, yellow ochre light and a trace of white. For the light area across the bridge of the dog's nose, this is yellow ochre and a bit of black, plus a lot of linseed oil. Because of the huge amount of linseed oil I added to this mix, I only really had one attempt to get it right. The bedding has been painted with my 2 purples, both warm and cool, plus my yellow to neutralise it. If I want to warm it up, I have added a bit of orange to my mix, so that would be cadmium red and yellow ochre light. I hope you have found this video useful. Please like and subscribe if you can, and check out my website sarahhallidayart.com, where you can find examples of my work and details of online classes that I run. Thank you for watching and see you for the next one.